If you're not careful, they'll take both of us. Fréwaka, Fréwaka, ole-vous, ole-vous. Shoo must go and take care of Peg when they come for you. They come for you. Fréwaka is a Shudder original, written and directed by Aslan Clark, who did The Devil's Doorway and other projects. Check out our IMDb page for the full list of her work. And this is a very, very, very Irish folklore-themed psychological drama with some horror elements and the thought of Catholicism dominating somebody's spirit to the point that they basically take it out on everybody around them. And then it creates a mental health crisis in a particular family line. At least that's what I gathered from it. This is a very, very artsy, European, and kind of crazy film to think about as it unfolds. And while it does tip its hand with something a little bit earlier on that really doesn't make the twist all that surprising, the impressive camera work and the fact that this just deep dives into a lot of psychological stuff with some great, great shots and a very, very good performance by Claire Maloney, who is very, very good as Shoo. Or Shuban, I believe is how it's said. And I do want to say, for anybody that is Irish, if I mispronounce any of these names, I do deeply apologize. But there are some great films that have come from Wales, from Scotland, from Ireland, and there's a lot of mythology about creatures and just crazy stuff that has happened going back decades and decades. And Shoo decides to take a job as a primary care provider for Peg. And I'm not going to try to pronounce the actress's name who plays Peg. And that's P-E-I-G. But I do want to say the lady does a terrific job as a woman that is dealing with the after effects of medical issues. And she's in a very, very isolated house in a very isolated town. It kind of reminded me a bit of a few seaside towns here like Mukilteo and Ocean Shores. And Washingtonians will understand and nobody else will. So, basically, it turns out Shoo has a bit of a strained relationship with her mother. She also has a girlfriend named Mila, played by Alexandra B. That I tried to figure out how to pronounce the last name, and I just wasn't going to be able to. And basically, Shoo did not have the best relationship with her mother. That kind of is a dominating theme throughout this movie. I'm trying to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, and Peg doesn't necessarily want to let her in because she's very isolated, and also there's a few reasons for that that are actually pretty much like shown in the beginning of the movie that takes place a number of years in the past. That carries forward, and it's actually pretty good. In fact, it's actually great at points. I'm not going to call the movie entirely perfect. I think there are a few things it aims high for and doesn't quite reach the heights that it thinks it, or that it probably intended to. But for good world building and one hell of a closing shot. One hell of a goddamn closing shot with one character that I'll talk about here. It really will stay with you. It is one of definitely the better horror movies of 2025, even though it's marked on Letterboxd as 2024. I assume it came out at film festivals. It just hit Shudder recently. And it's quite good. It is quite good. It is something that is going to stick with me for a while. I may have to rewatch it at some point. May even end up enjoying it a little bit more now that I know what to look for. Do get ready to pay attention to the captions unless you know the Irish language. I don't. And I really had to try and get the pronunciations right. I even had to spell some of this shit out. And I'm probably still getting it wrong. But there were, and they splashed in a few good characters and did enough that it carried the film even when it fell on some familiar tropes. Characters doing something kind of stupid. I don't know why they didn't bother to empty the trash at any goddamn point. That was one thing that was quite frankly disgusting to me as somebody that isn't the best housekeeper, but also has to do that at my job, always tries to keep, the trash emptied and all that. I don't know why that one particular thing bothered me. But also goats. Goats seem to be a dominating theme here. I don't know what goats necessarily have to do with mythology, but maybe it's like the witch or the Vavitch. Yes, I know it's called the witch. But it's quite good. It is quite good, and Claire, once again, does a good job, and the actress who played Peg does well, and the actress who plays Mila. And there are other good performances in this, but those are the central ones that we worry about and that we focus on. And there is one thing that Peg says about what could possibly be going on with the house and why she's so isolated. They like music. They're always listening. And you have to be careful. You have to, keep your wits about you. You can't be medicated. You can't do any of this stuff. And, of course, whenever medication and stuff is involved, you do raise the question, are they just trying to hide certain things that they're going through, certain trauma that they went through? Or are there basically, is there a good reason to have medication? Obviously there is. And there are a few more things they could have explored, but with a nice, tight, 95 minutes, I think they did a pretty good job here. So I'm going to get into spoilers. So that's just your warning right there. I'll do my best to cover this. 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. So now that really sloppy explanation's out of the way, Shoo has her pills. Mila reminds her of that. Mila's her girlfriend. They had a surrogate, or a sperm donor, essentially, that has left Mila pregnant because she was the one that was healthiest to carry the kid. And we see in the beginning a party that it could have been taking place in the goddamn 70s, which I'm thinking actually because of the year that's probably right. The late 60s, early 70s, somewhere around that. And Peg ends up basically going missing on her wedding night. Her husband's looking for her, and Peg, before this, is even throwing up, implying that she's pregnant. More on that here in a bit. Then we cut to present day. A mother has basically, is whispering, muttering to herself, and is wearing a dress and basically takes her own life. That's never the answer, but obviously it turns out that the mother is very messed up mentally. And then Shoo shows up with Mila. Mila is going to take care of this, of all the cleanup and everything, despite the fact that she looks like she's ready to pop, because Shoo has a job, primary caregiver, and takes this because they need the money. So she goes to a very isolated area. There's a weird ginger boy. I don't know why I had to say it like Sean Connery. That has a goat. Again, goats are kind of like a prevalent theme here. So, should have listened to the old man Sean is what Shoo should have done. But she couldn't do that because then we wouldn't have had much of a movie. She would have gone home, they would have cleaned up the apartment, and the movie would have been like 25 or 30 minutes. Distant screams when you're in a forest that you're not familiar with. That's always a good sign. Weird shit hanging from the tree. Very atmospheric. Even a pair of scissors. Oh boy! That's not going to factor into anything later. And she realizes there's a whole bunch of stuff like just deliveries and stuff all around. It's like a really fucked up place outside. Like it's really not very clean. And, basically the lady is, the lady is like, I'm just going to call her Peg because they came up with, there was another name for her, but, yeah, this basically is just, this is a woman is trying to keep distance, from everybody because of what happened to her when she was younger. She doesn't want to even clean up because they don't like some smells. But, oh, you have a cigarette. I'm calling it a cigarette because that's not what they call it over there. And if I call it what they call it, then I'm probably going to either get flagged or called bad. But you know what they call it. And I'm not knocking. I'm just saying cultural stuff. But a cigarette for a wash. And Peg is very stubborn. There's also a door with a horseshoe on it. That's a red door that you want to paint black. But there's the number 7 is prevalent. There's 7 nails in front of the door. There's 7 items in a window that Peg counts. And she, even at one point when there's like a porridge thing or oatmeal or whatever, she pours salt in the oatmeal. And oh my God, you don't like salt? Well, no, I don't like salt. That's a bit of a test because it turns out that whatever she is dealing with, they don't like pure metal, salt, or piss. That's why at one point she pissed herself before she was able to get in the house. Breaking through the window, by the way, always a good thing to do when you're a primary caregiver. Let me just break into this house. It's fine. But, yeah, they eventually form a bond. There's some stuff that's going on. Mila's going through stuff and is trying to encourage Shoo to go through this stuff. Or, she was your mother. You may not know about, or you may not have the best relationship with her, but she still was your mother. You don't understand. She's very torturous. Shoo fires back. And yeah, Peg's basically trying to get through to Shoo that she shouldn't be there. She also has some lashes on her back. Peg does. And after she goes in, or is going to go into town, she says, knock 3 times so I know it's you. And, well, yeah, it turns out the townsfolk are not exactly nice when it comes to Peg, and they're a bit back and set in their ways, shall we say. And I'm not saying Peg's necessarily the most amenable person. Shoo's a bit odd because her mother was mentally ill, I guess would be the best way. Crazy would definitely be a way to go about it. But she ends up taking the nails from in front of the door to put boards up to repair the window that she broke to get into the house. And now she's got to replace those nails because this is really important. There are certain rules in this house. And then nightmares start to plague Shoo. She's starting to really have some issues. She kind of feels a bit of attachment to Peg. We find out why here in a little bit. And Peg basically tells her, hey, this is what happened. On my wedding night, I was taken away. My husband had to make a deal to get me back. Well, wait a second. She doesn't have a kid. So I wonder what the deal was. And then, what's it like? It's punishment. Well, you don't know about punishment, Shoo. Well, actually, she does. She had burns all over her arm. So her mother was very devout, very crazy, and she didn't say her prayers. She'd almost scream her prayers. She would be burned by cigarettes or whatever. So Mila's still cleaning up. Apparently, you can just take about 8 million years to clean up stuff in Ireland. There's no cell phone signal, by the way, so she keeps having to go into town to find that. And yeah, things aren't really going all that well because Shoo's starting to basically crack. And Shoo kind of goes after her when Mila sends stuff to her. And Mila's like, well, maybe I just won't stick around for this anymore. What's she going to do with the baby? Who's going to take care of the baby besides her? It's fine. They don't really explore that. Then the caregiver shows up. And I will say that the woman playing the caregiver, and I mean this with the absolute most respect, has the perfect presence for horror. Whoever that actress is, or, well, the social worker is, she is perfect. Put her in more Irish horror movies. Put her in more horror movies. She would be great. Because she's just got that perfect face and those piercing eyes and that just look where she would be perfect for just, being a background character or even a main character for some of these indie Irish horror movies. And maybe even bigger projects. So, as Shoo basically starts to crack, she did find stuff in the goddamn basement, but got locked in the basement at one point, finding out more stuff about Peg. Peg basically tells her to leave. Shoo unravels more and more and more. She's hearing stuff like, screaming your prayers. She's hearing this weird singing. And yeah, the townsfolk are kind of treating her badly. And then it's finally revealed that, well, Peg ended up losing her child as part of the deal. And that child was the mother. Yeah, Shoo's the granddaughter. I don't really think that was that hard to figure out, honestly. That's maybe my only issue with it, but I mean, the predictability doesn't breed contempt in this case. But there was a text on the mother, or from the mother's phone, to Shoo. Shuban, I believe, was the actual full name. That said, I won't bite. I won't bite, I won't bite, I won't bite, And that's something that the social worker says again, that woman was great. She was fucking creepy, and I mean that in the most complimentary, positive way. But Peg decides, well, I'm not going to let them take you, so I'm going to go into the basement. Then she comes out, oh shit, I'm all covered in blood and bleeding out, and they don't want me. Now the town is empty, except for the ginger boy that she told to fuck off with, some weird cultish people that seem to harken back to the first part where Peg was taken away a bit, or for a bit, and there's the goat, and people show up and they're like, we want to help you, Shoo, we want to help you. Peg's telling them, don't give in. And the only way to stop it is for Peg to shove a nail into her skull and die, I guess. They rushed this pretty quickly. Well, she tried to save her, but then Shoo basically snaps. She hears Mila knocking on the door, doesn't believe it, goes out and sees Mila's car. The door's open, and she hears some noise coming from the basement door, so she puts on the white gown and walks down there, basically as a way to sacrifice herself. And she goes through this weird woodsy, or viney area, and ends up on these mountains with, she gets a crown placed on her like it's fucking midsummer. And weird goat guy thing is up there, and she's then bleeding from the eyes, so seemingly the circle is complete. So either Mila has to sacrifice her kid, I assume, or their kid, or she can't have her back. I guess. I'm just kind of grasping at straws here because a lot of this was left up for interpretation, but I'm not going to complain about the movie because it's certainly memorable. It's not dull, I'll give it that. It's not entirely perfect, but it's pretty damn close. It's definitely one of the best horror movies I've seen this year and one of the best horror movies I've seen this decade. One of the most original, even with a few familiar themes. Agree. So A+, honestly, really, really fucking good. Right up there with The Ugly Stepsister, just a different film. Agree, disagree with what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.